Hello and welcome back to the Coaching with Impact podcast, the go-to podcast for female coaches ready to elevate their coaching business and really figure out how they can make a lasting impact. I am your host, FIFA Tran. I own Fame Modern Creative Studio, and I help diverse female coaches shine with confidence through an elevated online presence using web design and holistic brand strategy. Thank you for tuning in and joining us here today. I have such an exciting guest for you. We're going to be chatting all about summits, virtual summits, and we have an expert in the house here, really going to be talking about that topic specifically. So I'm so excited because this is such a great way for you to really build your visibility and tap into different networks. I'd like to introduce you to Jenn, who's going to be the expert on this topic. So welcome, Jenn.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, FIFA. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited too. I have so many questions I want to ask you. But first, let's dive into who you are. Just introduce yourself briefly to the audience so that we can kind of get a feel of the type of person you are.
Yeah. So my husband and I run Virtual Summit Search and the visibility ecosystem side as well. So we've got Virtual Summit Search, which is our directories for speakers and summits. And then visibility ecosystem is where we keep most of our other offers because we work with speakers beyond just going and getting on summits. But my husband is actually the speaking skills side of things. He has been in PR and he has taught speech at the university level and coached competitive speakers who've won awards. So he does all of that and the interview skills side. And then I do the strategy side to help you create sleaze-free sales strategy. And we work together to establish your visibility ecosystem so that you can have regenerative marketing that doesn't burn you out.
See, that's the thing I love, not burning out. Because I've suffered through that already, and yeah, it's not a fun thing, and it's not really something that you really realize until it hits you. So that's why we need people like you who kind of just bring about, you come up with strategies to be able for us not to get burnt out. So I love what you do. And what was really the motivation for you to really start this with your husband and just start Virtual Summit Search?
Yeah, so Virtual Summit Search actually started back in, I'm trying to remember, I think it was 2017. I was talking with a business friend. I've been speaking at summits since 2015 when I started my previous business. And so I was talking with a business friend and we were saying, oh my gosh, I love speaking on summits, but I keep finding ones that would have been perfect once I start promoting the summit and it's only 2 weeks out and they don't need any more speakers. So I had that side, and then I was hearing from other friends who were hosting summits, oh my gosh, I'm having trouble finding people who actually, because this was back in the day of live summits, who actually show up and don't leave me in a lurch and provide real value and aren't doing it as a pitch fest. So we said, okay, we as speakers need this and the hosts need this. So we created the speaker directory, and Virtual Summit Search just grew from there, and it really took off I started putting more time into it back in February 2020, ironically, not knowing that the pandemic was coming and the virtual summits were going to be a big thing. So it all kind of worked out serendipitously.
Some things happen for a reason, and it might not be the best timing, but there's probably a reason for it being at that time right before COVID.
Yep.
So that's really cool because I have seen you at different summits before, specifically the one called Teach Me How to Summit, which is specifically all about summits. And that was when really I wanted to get into summits. And that's where I saw you. And I loved what you do because that's the thing. I ran my very first summit last year in November, a virtual summit, very impromptu also. But it was a lot of fun. Huge learning curve, especially for somebody who has never run summits before. I have run events, but summits are a whole other thing, especially when it's virtual. So there's a lot of different tech and tools. So that's where I was like, I need to learn from people who have already done this. And that's where you came along. And then I saw your engine, which is Virtual Summit Search. And I'm like, that is the most genius thing ever. So, yeah, thank you for creating such an awesome platform for really finding other summits to be able to speak at, to leverage the audience, and also for people to post about their summits. Because I wish I knew about that before I created my virtual summit. But for the one coming up, I'm definitely going to be using your platform because that is really the place to be at. So, I mean, I know we've been talking a lot about virtual summits and all that stuff up until now, but can you just briefly explain in your own words why virtual summits can be such a powerful tool that I recommend and you recommend that coaches and speakers really use to expand their reach?
Yeah, so I'll start with the speaker side and then kind of expand a little bit on the host side because there's lots of different things that come from both sides. So for speakers, a virtual summit is really great because there's 4 goals that I tend to work with my clients to establish, and they're going to vary summit to summit, but you are typically looking at leads and sales, which are the 2 that most people are thinking of automatically when they're like, okay, what am I going to get out of a summit? But
Mm,
the 2 other goals that people don't think about is authority and connections. Because when you are going on a summit, the host is transferring their audience's trust to you. The other speakers are transferring their audience's trust to you. They're saying, I trust that FIFA is going to deliver an amazing presentation. And so you're immediately skipping several steps in the customer journey to build that trust. So
mm,
it helps to really jumpstart your relationship with the audience. And that's the authority side. And then the connection side, as a speaker, you're getting on the stage with probably 10 to 20 other people. Even though it's a virtual stage and you're not going to be standing right next to them, it still gives you an opportunity to connect with them. So you're able to say, hey, we're on the same summit together and it looks like our audiences are really aligned. I'd love to chat and see if maybe there's an opportunity for collaboration, but at least to get to know you. And I've had a lot of collaborations that have come from summits and friends that I've made because of summits. And sometimes even the audience ends up being those connections as well, because sometimes there are folks who work with your audience who are joining the summit to get a bird's eye view from their customer's perspective. So those are some of the reasons that it's really beneficial as a speaker and a coach to speak at summits.
mm,
But then as a host, you are getting in front of hundreds to thousands of people, especially if you're motivating your speakers to promote in the right way, not going and saying, hey, if you don't promote, I'm going to kick you out or something, which I've had people do. I do
mm.
not recommend. But if your speakers are really on board, you've got them all hyped up and they are promoting to their audience, you're getting in front of all sorts of new people and they're getting in front of new people as well because you're all sharing your audiences and you're making those deeper connections. You get to connect individually with every single speaker, and it gives you an opportunity to invite people maybe you were a little leery of inviting onto a podcast because there's no immediate monetary value, or who you really want to do this collaboration with. Maybe you have this amazing paid workshop idea, or you've got something creative and out of the box that you want to do with them. A summit can give you a really easy, low lift way on their side, maybe not so much on yours, to go and reach out to them and say, hey, I've got this opportunity. I'd love to have you on. All you have to do is record a presentation, answer some questions, etc. And so you're getting that. But the great thing is that then if you are going and evergreening your summit, which is something that I end up working with clients on because not a lot of folks are teaching that, you can take all of that content that you spent 3 to 6 months, maybe even more working on with your summit, and you can keep getting content out of it. You can keep using it on your marketing because you still have something to point them back to. So you've got all those videos, you've got all those social posts that you created, you can keep using them. And so it makes your visibility ecosystem, which is your regenerative marketing system, so much easier. And you could literally use one summit and fuel 6 to 12 months worth of content and keep recycling it, keep letting it grow, and do so much with it. So tons of benefits. Those are just the ones that I'll touch on right now.
That's incredible because that's the thing, right? Like I didn't even think about evergreening my summit. I just thought, I did once. Okay, that was awesome. I got all these connections. I got all these leads. Okay, now what? Like, do I keep like creating new summits? Because that's where I'm at too. It's like I will start doing this every year. but I didn't think even for a second that I could just reuse some stuff as well. That, I spent about, I'll be honest, 2 to 3 months planning the summit, which is a very short period of time, on top of running another in-person event. So that was very interesting, but I'd recommend people not do that. Give yourself more time to plan a summit because it takes a lot of work. But that's the thing. Like I didn't even think about that. So when it comes to evergreening a summit and really making it last beyond just one event, what kind of process does that involve? Like, can you share, I don't know, maybe some tips that people could start using to kind of like get started? And I know you have also some resources that we're going to mention at the end, but anything that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, so I think probably the most helpful thing to share right now, because like when I do evergreen summits with my clients, we do 2 to 4 hours of work on those. So don't want to get too deep into the weeds and overwhelm anybody. But what an evergreen summit is a way for people who weren't in your audience or weren't in the speakers' audiences to discover your summit after it's over and still get some of that live event experience, and at the very least get to have access to some of those resources. Before I started evergreening, most people that I was seeing do anything with their summit afterward were just taking the replays and turning them into a bundle, and maybe not actually communicating the value very well. A lot of people are just like, here's 26 replays, have fun. That doesn't sell very well. But if someone gets to go and sign up for a summit, you've used the exact same registration page, change some of the copy on it to reflect the evergreen status, because we don't want to be gross and sleazy about it and pretend like it's a live one, like, those webinars that we all
Oh,
used to
yeah.
see where, oh, we have 3 different times starting today, and they were very clearly automated. We're not doing that. We're not going to be weird and dishonest about it.
I was
So
going to.
yeah, there's one software system that's one of their main selling points is you can pretend like it's live every week of every month. Ew. Anyway, so you're making it clear that it's evergreen, but folks are able to still sign up, same as they did before. They go on your email list. They get emails throughout the time period that the summit is open to them, and it's evergreen to them specifically. It's not that it's open for a week. They get a certain time frame. So if your videos were available for 24 hours originally, you could do it like that. You could give them all of them at for a certain amount of time. There's different ways that I end up working on that with my clients. It just depends on your business model, your audience, a few different factors. So they sign up. They immediately get the option to upgrade to the All Access Pass as a fast action offer, same as a lot of people do for the live summit. You don't have to do that, but I do find that converts best. So they get the fast action offer, but during the time period that they have access to the Evergreen Summit, they can also get the early bird uh, pricing for the All Access Pass, and they can then go and upgrade after the summit for the full price for the All Access Pass. But your conversions tend to be better when they get a chance to taste test all of the sessions. They may not watch all of them. They shouldn't watch all of them in most cases. I always recommend for my folks pick 2 to 4 or 2 to 3, I should say. And I give them a quiz that they can take that sorts them into buckets, essentially. So then they get a customized email that says, all right, it looks like you should watch these sessions on day 1, these sessions on day 2. And you can include that in a reminder to them as those sessions open up during the Evergreen Summit. So there's some really cool things you can do. But one of the things I love about Evergreen Summits is when you are planning to host them every year going forward, you get to experiment. You can build up an ads audience that you then know will convert when the live summit goes, and you can just ratchet up the ads budget and change out the creative to go and add them into the live summit. You can test out what gets the most engagement. Maybe your Facebook group wasn't doing great, but you find that an Instagram account works great or something like that. So there's a bunch of different things you can try, and you can test out price points, all sorts of things. So Evergreen is a really great way to not only make the most of the content and the work that you put into it, but also to test things out. And since I don't want to go too much into it, if you do want to find out more, go to evergreensummits.com and I've got a free audio training on there for you.
Wow. See, that was, I mean, what you said there was incredibly valuable because, like, these are not things that a typical person like me would know about. Because when you think virtual summits, it's like, okay, it's one and done. And then you're selling just the replays or bundles,
Mm-hmm.
whatnot, like you were mentioning. So that's where, in my case too, I didn't even think about evergreening it. So that's why when I came across you and what you do, I was very fascinated because I'm like, more people need to teach this and you need more customers because that is incredible what you're doing. Why not make the most out of this one summit that you've already started to, plan 6 months even to just like have it once and then have it sit there. So there's a whole strategy behind it. So I love that you shared about all of those things. And I would imagine that there's like so many different tools out there for you to be able to make it into an evergreen thing too. So, I mean, just off the top of your head, is there any particular tool that you'd recommend to kind of help this process with like evergreening something, or is that too, I guess, broad of a question?
Well, it's more that when I'm working with my client, because part of the Evergreen Summit strategy that we work through on our VIP days is figuring out your tech stack. Because one thing I found is for a lot of folks, they do their summit and they realize, I absolutely despise this tool and I never want to use it again. Or, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about this piece and now I have to find something that can do that for the Evergreen Summit. So I end up working with a lot of my clients to figure out what they already have that works, what gaps they're missing, and what they want to replace. So honestly, that's probably more what I would say that you want to do. You do need stuff like countdown timers, and there's several different options I've got for that because a lot of people don't want to use Deadline Funnel if they're not already using it because it is really expensive. So there's other options that you can do, but yeah, it really just depends on what platform you're on. Because if you're on Squarespace, if you're on Kajabi, if you're on something like that, you're going to be a little bit more limited than you would be if you're on WordPress because that's just got so many more options that you can play with. So it's just knowing your platform, knowing what you prefer in a tool, and then figuring out what you're missing, what you want to keep from your current tech stack, and what you need to replace.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I know a lot of people get very overwhelmed with the idea of running a summit as a host just because of the tech stack, the tech involved, and especially people who are not tech savvy. There's so many different tools out there. And I mean, when I ran mine, I was just running it on WordPress. And like you said, it could get a little limited, right? Unless you know how to like implement the different plugins or tools that you can actually create on a WordPress site, it might not be the best choice for some people. So that's the thing. So you kind of have to like work with somebody like you to kind of like understand, like you're already in the industry, you already know what tools work for each of your clients. So that's the thing that you'd have to consider when starting a summit or thinking of hosting your own summit. When you were mentioning evergreening and about the whole like webinars and trying to fake that it's live, if the summit is running for 3 days, the moment that they join, even if the summit is done technically, they can still access it for one day, and then the next day it's going to have the other set of speakers. Is that what you mean when you're basically having it kind of live again?
Yeah, so that's one of the approaches that I end up taking with my clients on it. I usually have a couple of different options. So some folks prefer to do it 24 hours for day one, 24 hours for day two. Some people didn't structure their summit in a story fashion. I approach my summits as I'm going to come up with it's more like a course than just a bunch of people talking. Some people are just like, I'm just going to find people and they're going to talk about things on this topic. And if that works, that's fine. My summits, I've got, all right, so these are the foundations, these are the things you need to start, these are the next steps, kind of stuff like that. So sometimes we have to restructure their summits, and that was one of the things I had to do with one client is she just kind of, here, share things. And she's like, but I realized I have much better results when there's a path for the people to follow. Otherwise, they're just like, I don't know what to watch, and they don't watch it. So you can do it as day 1, day 2, day 3, whatever. You can do 24, 48 hours. Different people have different preferences. Or you can do it, you have access to every single session for 3 days or whatever. So that's where those deadline timers come in. You need to be able to track when they've started their timer and when they've stopped it. And just depending on which system you have, it'll be whether it's from the moment they sign up with like deadline funnel, or if it's from the moment they visit a page with some of the other tools that I use. So there's a few different ways you can do it.
Okay, yeah. So there's very specific tools that really help you to do that. Where it's like, okay, you're not manually keeping track of everybody that's doing it. It's more the
No.
tech and the tool that's actually doing it. And there's tools out there that can help you to do this and make it evergreen. So that's very interesting to know. And that's a very smart way of approaching it. So okay, so I mean, on the host side of things, like for me, as somebody who has started to host a summit, I know that you mentioned that it really helps hosts to build authority, especially when, you don't think that you're getting so many benefits from being a host, but it's more the collaboration aspect and all that stuff. Because that's what I thought when I was running this whole thing, is really just collaborating, building my email list, and all that stuff. A lot of the time, the hosts are shining the light on their speakers. So, as someone who is looking to host their own summit, is there any advice that you could provide that hosts can implement to generate leads and engagement for their own business, as opposed to just always highlighting the speakers and then kind of like neglecting themselves as hosts?
As a host, you have a lot of opportunities to showcase yourself in light of your speakers. So I always have myself as the anchor session on a given day. So a lot of the time I'll be the first session they see in the last session. And you can also, because as a coach, you're used to taking the big picture and making it manageable. So you can do the same thing with your summit. You can do a recap session or a session in the middle of the day where you bring together the topics that have already been talked about. It can be live or it can be pre-recorded, but you could do that as a way to showcase how you would take these things that your clients, your potential clients anyway, are learning, and how you would bring it together into something they can immediately take action on. Essentially, give them a taste of what it would be like to work with you through your summit. I've got one client who, she ran a summit last year. She wanted to do it again this year, but she really wanted to make it something that drove people into her membership because they wanted to do more of what it is. So we worked on, okay, how do we recreate some of the key aspects of her membership so that people were like, okay, I love these networking sessions. I love these collaboration sessions. I want more of this. And then they come and join the membership. So you essentially do the same thing, and you can even bring on clients to talk about their area of expertise as long as it's related to the summit topic. But that gives you an opportunity to be able to have them highlight you as a coach as well. So that's another way that you can do it as a host.
That's some great advice, because that's the thing. You would think that, being a speaker might be a little more of the, I guess, the side to move more towards, where you, okay, yeah, you want to leverage all these things, but then you don't think so much about the host. For some people it's obvious, some people it's not. So that's why I wanted you to kind of get into it, where you shared advice about why hosts should leverage these summits and really build their network. And it's not something that you hear very often in terms of benefits, because I know that some people also use these virtual summits as launches. So in this case, you mentioned your client was kind of launching also her membership. So this is like a great way for you to kind of just build up that traction for your own programs, and also just giving the stage and collaborating with other people. So I know that we talked a lot up to this point about hosting a summit. Now, for the speaker side, there's a lot to be said about why you should be a speaker at different virtual summits. But what advice could you share for those interested in getting involved as a speaker at a virtual summit?
First thing I always tell all my clients is tell people. Because they'll come in and they'll say, I don't know why I'm not getting invited to summits. I don't know why I'm not getting invited to speak on podcasts. And I ask them, who knows that you want to speak? And they go, oh, I guess nobody. And it sounds so simple and so basic, but I'm going to tell you, it is one of the fastest ways to start getting those invites. And it ebbs and flows. It's different seasons. Summits in different industries come in different seasons. But when it's that season, that means you're that much more likely to get those invites, because hosts really prefer referrals. They're going to ask other speakers. They're going to ask their friends. And a lot of people are really reticent to recommend somebody unless they know that that person is willing to speak for free. Because just because you're speaking for free doesn't mean that you aren't going to make sales. And I've made 4-figure sales, like single client 4-figure sales off of speaking at online events. So just because you're not getting paid up front doesn't mean you won't get paid, but a lot of people are going at it without a sleaze-free sales strategy in place, without really any strategy in place. They're phoning it in. They may have a great presentation, but they're not interacting with the audience. They're not doing anything else to make sure that they're making those connections. And so they're not seeing a return. So a lot of people say, never mind, speaking at summits for free is just a waste of time. And it's just because they're not coming at it with the right strategy in place. And so because so many people are coming at it from that perspective, folks don't want to say, oh, you should ask so-and-so to speak if they think that they're going to get turned down when they come and ask you. So that's the first thing, is go ahead and make sure you're telling people that you want to speak. And then you can also get on the speaker directory over at Virtual Summit Search, which is, I've had hosts fill up literally their entire summit through the speaker directory. So it is a good place to get found. And then just make sure that you have a visibility ecosystem in place that is showcasing you as a speaker. So when I say a visibility ecosystem, it's taking your speaking opportunities and showcasing them so that others who are finding you and not getting a direct referral know that you are interested in speaking. If you're promoting the summits that you're speaking at, hosts are going to be beating down your door as soon as they find you, because most speakers do not promote. If you do that extra step and go just that slight extra quarter of a mile even, everyone is going to want you to speak.
Oh, that is so key. That's what I realized when I also started my virtual summit in November. There was some speakers that were so willing to just promote, and I didn't even have to ask them. And then there's some that are kind of like missing in action. They're just kind of doing their thing, and then every once in a while, maybe one post or so. But that's the thing too, that I realized that there are some virtual summits that they have different prerequisites. um let's say a number of email subscribers, or a number of, like, there's like certain requirements that some virtual summits actually put in place. So what do you have to say about that?
Many, many things do I have to say about that. That is one of my soapboxes. I have sent so many emails to my folks, especially the ones in the directory. When I see those come through, just reminding them you don't have to say yes. And they'll come through and say it, and usually you can spot them before you even get to that list requirement, because it will be the most generic pitch you've ever seen. It's, do you want to come speak in this Women in Business Summit? We're going to have 500,000 people attending, and all of this because they're expecting 5,000 person email lists from however many speakers, and go, we'd love to have you speak. Doesn't give you a topic, which shows that they did not research you. Maybe they used your name at the beginning. Maybe. And then it's just so generic. It's very clear they didn't do any research. If I'm going to pitch someone to speak on my summit, I've done my research. I know exactly what topic they could speak on. I probably have a couple of backups, and I can call out something very specific about why I found them and chose them. If a host isn't doing that, and they're asking for 5,000 person email list, just delete it. Don't even bother responding, because what I have started seeing is if you respond, they'll say, oh, that's okay. We have spots for guest speakers or whatever they decide to call them. You only have to pay me $35 or something.
Oh, wow.
And just, it's a very scarcity mindset approach to me, because I've often found the people with the smaller lists are
Mhm.
smaller because they cleaned their list. They made sure the people who weren't engaged were off of it. And their audience is more engaged, the speaker is more engaged, and they get more results. So
Mhm.
if you get a pitch for something like that and it's not generic, it sounds like they actually did their research, then you might reach out to them and say, hey, I don't have a 5,000 whatever person email list, but I do want you to know the summit hosts that I have talked to and heard from have found better results with people with smaller lists. The reason my list is 500, 1,000, 2,000 is because I don't keep people who aren't opening my emails and engaging with them on my list. So I'm going to be able to deliver the same kind of results or better than your speakers with 5,000 person lists. Are you interested? They may still say no. And in that case, they don't value you. Bye. So yeah, most of the time that's the case. There's a couple of people out there who are teaching summit hosting from that scarcity mindset. And okay, maybe it works for them, but I hate it. And most of the time, they're acting like letting you share your freebie is the thing. And they're not giving you an affiliate commission. They're not giving you any way to even potentially get anything upfront. They're expecting you to only get leads, which is great. But one of the benefits of being a summit speaker is being able to get some sort of commission, or I've started doing profit shares with my speakers. So there's those 5,000, it's gone up to 7,000 in some cases now. Requirements, it's not worth it in most cases. They're going to get really unengaged speakers, and they probably are not going to get the numbers of signups that they think they're going to get.
See, that's the thing. And the same can be said about followers too. Now, you could have speakers that have the biggest following, but that doesn't mean that they're engaged. So it's at the end of the day, it's just vanity metrics,
Yep.
and it does not mean anything. So do not pay too much attention to the numbers. It's really, really all about doing your research, your due diligence when it comes to learning about the person, knowing what they're actually good about, and going with your gut feeling sometimes too plays a part in the way that they interact with you and the way that they actually have a relationship. So as a final note, is there advice or tip or any tips that you have specifically for those looking to excel in the virtual summit space and build a lasting impact? What is like your number one hot advice that you want to share?
Be engaged. If you're engaging in summits that you're not even speaking at, you're going to stand out on the host radar, and then reach out to them afterward and say, hey, if you host this again, I would love to be considered. But the more you engage either as a speaker or an attendee, the more likely you are to get noticed. And especially as a speaker, because if you're, and if even as an attendee, if you're promoting a summit that you're not speaking at, the host is going to say, what? No one does this. You might even reach out to them and say, hey, I know I'm not speaking, but I would love to contribute a bonus to the all access pass just as an affiliate. I've had people do that, and it was just the best feeling because they saw the value in the summit. They were giving more value to the summit, and it was just a win-win all around all across the board. I was able to say, hey, we have a bonus in the all access pass. And they got some promotion because I got to share that with the attendees. They got qualified leads. Everybody won in that situation. And then also, if you are considering hosting a summit, speak first. That is one of my biggest tips, is try to speak at least 2 or 3 summits before you decide to host, because you're going to see the things you hate and the things you love, and it's going to make your summit that much better.
Yeah, great tips. Thank you for sharing that. I honestly, there were so many tips that you shared today for the audience. Now, I'm especially me as a host too. I'm like, I'm learning all these things from you. Thank you so much for everything that you shared, all the gold nuggets you need to know in terms of like, you know, the tech. You need to know like what types of speakers you want at your summit, but you want engaged speakers. Numbers don't matter. Do not look at the vanity metrics. And if you need to evergreen your summit, talk to Jenn because there's people out there like you who really show you how to make your summit last and make a huge impact beyond just one day. So definitely check out her stuff. But is there anything exciting that you are working on right now that you'd also like to share with the audience in terms of freebies? I know you mentioned some resources. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So we've always got, if you're looking at Evergreen, we've got evergreensummits.com. That's the audio training for that. If you want to speak on more summits, you can go to virtualsummitspeaking.com. But one of my favorite new freebie offers that we have is the speaking sales style quiz, because the sleaze free sales strategy is one of the key frameworks that we work with our clients on. And a lot of people struggle with that. So I've got a quiz that will help you figure out, okay, what are your strengths and your weaknesses when it comes to making sales through speaking without feeling gross about it. So you can go and take that quiz and it'll put you on my email list, but you will also get the invite to join the directory as a verified speaker and get a pretty cool bonus that can start your podcast tour. So yeah, and then if you are wanting to join the speaker directory, I'd love to see you in there.
I am definitely going to be posting my upcoming summit in August on your virtual summit search platform. And I recommend everybody else do the same because the more places that you can put your summit in and build that visibility, the better, right? So
Yep.
thank you so much for all of your amazing tips today. I'm excited to dive deeper into the resources. And yeah, definitely check Jenn out. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah. So you can find me at Virtual Summit Search on pretty much all the platforms. As of this recording, I don't know exactly when this will air, so we may or may not be switching over to at Visibility Ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, look for us either on Virtual Summit Search or Visibility Ecosystem.
Awesome. Thank you for your time. And thank
Yeah.
you for everybody for tuning in to this awesome episode. This podcast is really all about bringing people together, subject matter experts and experienced coaches, to really just help each other build that impact and share our energy with each other to kind of like figure out how we can build a better coaching business and really make your business thrive. So definitely tune into all of the other episodes that we have coming up. And thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.